immediately their economic situations changed.
Sass, Graham, and Scott are on board.
Well, I know that they apparently have some difficulty with a provision that could pay some people more afterwards through unemployment and other benefits than they would have been getting if they were at work. And some people think that may be a disincentive to go back to work. I think people will be very incentivized to get back out and go to work when it's appropriate and when that happens. So hopefully they can work that out. And I know all three of those gentlemen absolutely support small businesses and direct payments and the other direct payments to hospitals, for example, and some of the other affected industries. I would say that our two goals here were to help individuals and help industries who qualify for that kind of support and are really seeing very difficult times. Darlene?
I was curious, when do you think the president will be ready to travel again? He's talking about opening up the country, that could possibly come in the next couple of weeks. When is he ready to start?
And as the president said last night, Darlene, he said this is a medical crisis before it's a financial crisis, and he would love to reopen the country. He plans on doing it little by little, depending on what the data and the facts say. So that will remain true. He obviously is anxious to travel and get around and help the country reopen, but we're not there right now. We're surging supplies. We're getting more masks and ventilators in those where they need to be. The task force meeting is talking about the modeling and the flattening of the curve. We are listening to the governors constantly about what their needs are and what they're seeing in terms of their data. But obviously the president is like a lot of Americans, anxious to know when the panic and the pain will subside and give way to recovery. The American comeback will happen. It's just a matter of time, and this president, until that can happen, he, and it looks like a majority of Congress, maybe all of them, through a voice vote, Hans, will go ahead and try to at least get that relief that they need. But obviously he's anxious, anxious to get out into the country and meet with small business owners and industry and individuals. At the same time, he's pretty content here managing this crisis, and actually America's content with him. Poll after poll after poll show a majority of Americans, and many key crosstabs in those polls, approve of the job the president is doing in handling COVID-19. And this is, the president really never had, I was telling you yesterday, he never had 61% approval in Gallup on the economy, and you should have, he certainly deserved it. But I think it's because people say, well, I expect Donald Trump to get the economy going. But they never saw a health crisis of this magnitude coming, and that the president would be handling it at a time such as this. And they approve the way he's handling. His numbers are much higher than Congress is handling, for example. Maybe that'll change after Congress does its job and gets this package through. But Secretary Mnuchin and our legislative director and our new chief of staff, they've been just doggedly negotiating this over a series of days, particularly Secretary Mnuchin. And America's about to see the result and about to get the check. The check is in the mail, literally.
Kellyanne,
Yes, sir.
Kellyanne,
And then,
do you think that Boeing is going to accept the U.S. having an equity stake in the company?
you'd have to ask Boeing that. I don't know.
Will they get a package or some type of relief?
Well, as I read it, there is some money there for some in the airline industry, is the way I read it. So I don't know the particulars.
Kellyanne, what do you think about foreign leaders who think this is hysteria, and also are recommending that only people over 60 and with
Well, you'd have to tell me which foreign leaders have said that.
I'm talking about the leader of Brazil, the president of Brazil. He said this is a hysteria, and he said that only people over 60 should be on isolation and the schools should be open.
Okay, so he's saying that for Brazil, correct? Okay, well then that'll be his policy in Brazil.
This is smart. This is not putting people's
Well,
lives in
he has to
danger.
make the policy
Brazil right now
for Brazil.
has the highest number in Latin America.
Yeah, he has to
Over
make.
2,000 people.
So President Bolsonaro has to make the decision for Brazil, and President Trump will continue to make the decision for the country, along with the governors. I mean, you've got governors making their own decisions. They're shutting down their states, or they're saying the schools are no longer going to be in session. So we are not, we have a democracy here, and we have states and territories in the District of Columbia that make their own decisions. But this president, as our leader, has high marks for his handling of the COVID-19 coronavirus, I think in large part because people see every day the task force is out there giving the science, giving the economic update, have different cabinet secretaries up there, talking about what they're doing, the VA and HUD, for example, education last week. She wasn't there, but the announcements were there. Made me Mother of the Year, I guess, for that day, to be able to go home and tell the kids no standardized testing this year. Perfect. And so, but I think that's why the governors are in such close contact with the president, the vice president on a daily basis. But I'm going to let the president of Brazil talk to the Brazilians, and we'll keep talking to the Americans here about the policy.
Go inside. You're
Question
going to
about
catch a
the
cold.
governors really quickly.
You're not kidding.
There have been 3 states, I think it's Ohio, Mississippi, and Texas, who have deemed abortion as non-essential, and we've heard again and again from the doctors to halt all non-essential medical procedures. Do you think that is a essential procedure? Should that be stopped until the pandemic? Does the White House have a position on that?
Well, I wasn't surprised that the Democrats tried to jam more money in there for Planned Parenthood, because they do that as they breathe. But you have to look at what the different states are doing in those regards. Each state is making its own decision with respect to its essential versus not essential services at a time when those states, particularly the state of Ohio, I believe, has took early and decisive action. Governor DeWine did, in terms of, I would say, prioritizing what was closing, what was staying open, what's essential, what's not essential. So, yes. Anyone else? Good to see you. All right, yeah, great to see you. I'd like to know where spring is. That's what I hope that's in the legislative package. Mandatory spring. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.
All right.